there, I am Zolairlaw, and this is The Joy of Computer Gaming, where we talk about good, intriguing, and awful examples of computer gaming history. Today's highlighted game is Robot Knights, the bounce-back balls at bones by blocking with your barrier or blasting with your bow game. That description makes this game sound way more exciting than it actually is, unfortunately. It's a co-op platform game that was written by Richard Watton and released by Red Rat Software on the Atari 8-bit in 1986. It never saw a release on another system, probably to those systems' benefit. This is one of the very few co-op games that were available on the Atari 8-bit, but it is simply a horrible game. Aside from bouncing balls off your shield as player one, everything else in the game is cumbersome, sluggish, and unfun. The game does have a unique look to it, albeit a very simplistic one. The title screen has this ugly large robot image and a wonky font. The Hall of Fame uses a script font that is reminiscent of Telengard's font, but not quite the same. This font is reused in the game itself at the bottom of the screen. In the game, you have very simplistic images that barely convey a sense of what's going on, and that's it. The platforms and world objects are very simplistic and generally only a single color. The main enemies do not animate at all, and only have 3 images for standing, heading left, and heading right. Those are probably actually only 2 images. On much later levels, the evil Otto appears and has 2 frames as he moves back and forth. Your enemies fire fireballs or weird ball things that have 2 frames each. Your robots have 2 frames of animation each for moving left, moving right, or climbing a ladder. Oddly enough, your characters have half the vertical resolution of everything else in the game, giving them a very blocky look. I found 3 different versions of the story for this game, and they don't all agree. The evil Otto is creating a monster that somehow will destroy the world of Future World. Yeah, Future World. The Robot Knights are sent in to stop him. The various versions of the story call these things zombies. They have a big skull, they're all bones. Yep, totally zombies, not something like, I don't know, skeletons? All you ever see are the 9 levels of the game. You have to kill everything in each room and pick up each item. There are random floating platforms, stairs, and doors, and oh yeah, some zaps on later levels that hurt you. The controls are about the best thing in the game since you use the joystick for each character with the button to jump. The archer can press down and the button to both jump and fire an arrow at the same time. Across the bottom of the screen, you can see your points and health as energy, as well as the name of the level you're on. Everything in this game feels very slow. You move slowly, you jump slowly, you fall very slowly, your enemies' balls move slowly. Your enemies, well, they don't move slowly when they move. But otherwise, just be patient if you want to play this game. You can never harm anything on your own. You have to wait for the enemies to toss their really slow balls and either deflect them with your shield or shoot them with your arrow, depending on which robot you're playing, to cause their shots to fly backward and hopefully hit an enemy, which thankfully all only have 1 health each. There are a whopping 2 kinds of enemies, skeletons and robots. They are identical except how they look and the kind of balls they throw. They will randomly move left or right if they can, and randomly toss balls to the left or right. Their balls can usually stick around on the screen for a very long time because they can bounce around and randomly move up and down. They may vanish randomly or when touching the edge of the screen. On some levels, to up the difficulty, there are a tremendous number of enemies which fling a tremendous number of balls. When they stand on each other, you can't even tell how many enemies are stacked together. This is particularly frustrating on level 4, where there are at least 24 skeletons. In fact, there seems to be a maximum number of 30 balls they can toss, so you could stand here forever, waiting for another shot to deflect that will never come, like I did twice trying to get through this in single player. I ended up giving up after sitting there doing nothing for 10 minutes. If a ball hits you, you take 20 damage. If an enemy touches you, your health drops very rapidly, and it generally means instant death. Enemies that are above or below you can't hurt you at least, but this same restriction doesn't apply to their shots. There's also Otto on the last couple of levels who just goes back and forth and fires a magnet-looking shot. There can only ever be 1 at a time on the screen, but if it hits you, he'll fire another one immediately, which makes the last level very annoying because you have to be right under him to grab some of the items. You can jump a measly space higher than you are, and you can fall up to 2 whole spaces. If you fall any further than that, you fall all the way to the bottom of the screen very slowly, and then take 300 damage. By the way, there are a couple pixel-perfect jumps in this game, so this whole falling thing is pretty much guaranteed to happen. And there are awful staircases that you have to jump to get past, and then you have to press up and then to the side and up and to the side over and over to climb each freaking step. You only ever have one life, and then you're out of the game if you run out of energy. When you die, everything freezes as your head flies away and then your body splits in two. It's probably the most entertaining thing about this game. There are energy items in the game to give you 100 energy back each, at least. Each room has to be cleared of all enemies and every item picked up before you can proceed to the next level through a doorway. The last level has a timer, and if you don't complete it in time, the monster awakens and you instantly lose. I guess he just wakes up and blinks and suddenly all of Future World just explodes. I don't know. Anyways, if you manage to complete the last level, you get to enjoy starting the game all over again because they couldn't even bother with a you win sequence. Other games like Droll, which repeat like this, at least have an ending sequence and then make the game more challenging each time. Not the case here. It's the exact same game all over again. You take control of one of the robot knights. Sir Brave sports his shot ricocheting shield and has been known to shield many skeleton to death with their own shots. Then there's Sir Brave, the archer robot, with his trusty baddie ball bounce back bow. Sir Brave is significantly better to play. His shield passively deflects enemy balls and is fairly large. It can deflect any number of balls at the same time. With your 2 frames of animation in each direction, he shifts the shield position a bit so you can deflect higher or lower balls depending on which frame you're on. Sir Bold, which is who I played for the 2-player playthrough, truly is awful to play. He doesn't have a shield, but instead he has a bow. This bow can only have a single shot on the screen at a time, though those enemies can have tons of them at once, so they knew how to code support for multiple shots. Anyways, this single shot is very, very slow, and if it collides with an enemy ball, and if you're lucky, it will cause it to reverse direction. This is bad if you hit a ball heading away from you because it will reverse course towards you. There's a little 2-second fanfare when you start the game, and another piece of music at the introduction to each level. It's kinda memorable, I guess. The sounds are nothing special. Most of the time you'll hear your robot shuffling or taking damage. There are a few other sounds as well. I played this game as a kid with my brother because co-op games were so rare. We never completed it, though I do recall us reaching at least level 6 with the robots. Why were co-op games so rare? They've always been one of my favorite types of games. The entire list of co-op games we had before Robot Knights had come out in 1986 was Alibaba, that we played a heck of a lot, Wizard of War, that got old fast, Gauntlet, which wasn't very fun, Cave Lord, which you could technically play cooperatively, where one player moves and the other fires, Realm of Impossibility, which was just awful, Colonial Conquest, which you could team up against the AI, and Time Bandits on the ST, which was okay, I guess? Later, we at least got the Bizarre Whizball. We played different cars to sort of co-op in Road Warrior Europa, blasted enemies together in Zybex, we got to do some dungeon crawling together in Blood Witch and later in Mystic Mirror, and we even controlled Space Marines to take down the Dreadnought together in Space Crusade. Heck, my father and I even played Wing Commander together, with him using the controller for flight controls and firing, and me using the keyboard for missiles, velocity, and navigation control. When the amazing XCOM UFO defense came out, we chose soldiers to play in the battles so we could play together with that as well. We truly were desperate for co-op games to play together, and they came along so rarely that we even gave earnest attempts to play through the awful ones, which sadly were a lot of them. And pretty much all of these were much better than Robot Knights. What's really confusing to me is how highly this is rated on Atari Mania. 7.6 out of 10? How many of you actually played this game? Seriously though, don't play Robot Knights. And certainly don't force your wife to play through Robot Knights with you. I cannot find anything about Richard Watton, not even a picture. He doesn't seem to have made other games, and there are numerous people with the same name. Aside from Robot Knights, I am definitely not familiar with Red Rat software at all. I decided to fire up a few of their games and try them out, but I did not find anything I wanted to play for more than a minute or two. I do have to say it was a little odd playing Escape from Doom World, a game that I had not thought about, let alone remembered, since I first played it back in 1987 or so. I don't think I ever played it for more than a few minutes back then either. The last couple of games they released were product tie-ins for the British snacks Quavers, such as One Step Beyond in 1993, which certainly wasn't subtle about it. Red Rat has been defunct for about 27 years at the time of releasing this video. I cannot find any information at all on Red Rat Software as a company, except that they were based in the UK. The closest I found was an interview with Tony Gocher, who developed Freaky Factory, Warcopter, and Death Races for them. I'm including a link to it in the description. He does mention that the company was run from a basement in Manchester by Chaz Partington, Harry Nadler, and Don Rigby. The most interesting thing for me in that interview was talk about a platform game named Red Ace that never got released. Tony said he was considering releasing it to the public domain, and apparently he did because in 2005 it was completed and released by Atari Legend. Oh, and there is a British Red Rat website that has nothing to do with the old game company at redrat.co.uk. On a completely unrelated note, this is probably the last bad game I will be covering in its own episode. I would much rather talk about the interesting or good games instead. I also really don't want to have to play through all of Monty Python's Flying Circus, WizKid, or Rage of Mages to cover them in a video like this.